Oh, really? I missed it. All right. Well, thank you for that.
Okay, we will go ahead and start. One of the great advantages of an afternoon panel is you don't have to work for the people dragging in who are coming to the first panel or two. So that's good to know. So we won't wait for anybody. We'll just jump right in. I'm Mike Vorhaus. I'm the moderator of the panel. I'm president of Maggot Advisors. We're a media-oriented research and consulting firm. I have given up my extraordinarily large name tag for two of my colleagues here who have been left out of the name tag gift giving. So I've shared as I was taught to by my darling mother. Who normally comes to these things. So nice that we had a good audience here. We're going to try to focus on you all. So we're going to want to get out to the audience and ask as many questions as possible from you. I always like to get a little measurement. I'm sure you all had coffee at lunch. Who's already got a question? Okay, now I'm relying on you. There we go. Yeah, you. And the woman taking the picture with the mini pad, do you think she's raising her hand or do you think she's just taking a picture with the mini pad? Those who say she's raising her hand, will you have a question too for us? Okay, maybe. I'm sure by the time everybody introduces themselves and we take a few general questions, we'll have sparked your questioning artistic capabilities. I'm going to ask every panelist to go ahead and introduce themselves. We've got a couple of general questions. I have 4 or 5 wonderful questions written by the panel. We will focus on those if necessary, but again, we'd love to get to you guys. Let's go ahead and start with our first panelist.
Mike, thank you. Hi, I'm Glasgow Phillips. I'm head of video at StarMaker Interactive, which is a global talent network that grew out of a suite of apps, companies based up in San Francisco. And we just started our video business in earnest last week with a really exciting launch that I'll be happy to tell you more about if it comes back around that way. Prior to that, I worked at Maker Studios, which was a multi-channel network on YouTube, recently acquired by the Walt Disney Company. And we started back in 2009, going from 5 channels to about 50,000 channels, and from 5 million views in a month to about 5 billion views in a month. So I'm very interested and feel very lucky to have been a part of the rise of online video. And I think StarMaker is positioned to do some really interesting stuff in the music space specifically. And we have a deep partnership with The Voice, which I think is why I'm on this panel. It's a second screen conversation.
Great. Jody?
Fantastic. Jody Stark. I work with Pixel, and Pixel is the world's largest privately held OTT platform. We provide that for AT&T in the United States, B, Sky Italia, Liberty Global, about 40 operators globally. And it's a complete end-to-end platform for over-the-top as well as personalized TV, advertising, and second screen.
Excellent.
I'm Brian Marr. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at a company called Smashing Ideas. We're located in Seattle. Smashing is we call ourselves a digital engagement agency. So we do all of our work for clients, ranging from Fortune 50 companies to many, many others. Everything from entertainment industry to airplanes and all kinds of other stuff. We do applications, websites, products and platforms. Apps and websites you probably know about. The products and platforms piece is the underlying stuff that makes everything work and work efficiently. And then on the product side, we're moving a lot more into that blend of physical and digital things that work together. So the company's been around for about 16 or 17 years. We use something called motivational design, which is something we're able to apply across all the different things that we work on. It's a combination of good user experience, gamification, behavioral psychology, all kinds of other fun things that just keep people engaged with stuff more often because, regardless of the industry, the same thing that we're talking about here in the entertainment industry, it's the same thing across the board. So everybody's looking for it.
Excellent. Thank you, Judy.
All right, I'm Judy Johnson. I'm Director of Product Management and Innovation for Bottle Rocket. I'm primarily responsible for a product platform that we have to deliver TV and video everywhere solutions. It allows brands to very, very quickly come up with a video solution. We do NBC, Star. I don't know why I'm going blank right now. NBC, HGTV, the Travel Channel, Bravo, USA, Telemundo, Mundus, a variety of apps that we create are built on this platform at Bottle Rocket. In addition to this, we also have a full app management platform to allow these brands to not only launch these apps, but to very easily manage their apps, the content that shows up each day, how to optimize it, how to change it daily, etc.
Excellent. Good. We have a nice group of speakers with some content and platform interest, which will, I think, fit well with the conversation. You guys working on your questions? Don't let me down. Okay, well, let's start with a really super obvious question. And I think the super obvious question for this panel is actually two questions, which is what is second screen and what is social TV? We had this conversation last year, and we had lots of opinions about how those two phrases, which I think are popular, are the same and or different. Who would like to take a stab at that first? Otherwise, we'll be starting down at Judy's end unless somebody's volunteering.
All right.
Second screen.
We do make the second screen. So I can start here. For us, the second screen experience is a screen that somebody's watching different than their primary screen. And up till now, this has been your mobile screen. It's been your iPad, your tablet, your phone experience that complements what you're watching on your primary screen, which once again has now been the television. I think now we're kind of looking at and saying, okay, anything can be your primary screen. What's your second screen experience on top of that? And it's how do you provide content that complements what's being watched on the primary experience?
Yeah, I'd have almost a similar definition, which is just even a year ago it was, we were talking about that television as the primary thing, but now it's, whatever that main primary screen is, and then whatever, it's that second device, whether it's a tablet, laptop, something that, we haven't invented yet that's allowing you to interact in different ways from what's going on with the content.
Your watch?
Your watch, yeah.
How would you define second screen experience, Jody?
Second screen, I would say probably the same thing. I was going to go into social, but do we want to take
it ahead?
Okay. The social side is much more interesting to us, or to me personally. I think to a lot of folks. We spend a lot of time thinking about personalization at Pixel and how you make the feed itself, whatever that may be, whether it's composed of video, text, pictures, other assets. But what are the overall experiences? How that's relevant to you, not only to you, but to you at that time of day and where you are in that cycle of your life, whether you're at home or you're at work or you're picking your kids up from school at the grocery store, wherever that may be. So the concept of the social has changed a lot, and I'm sure that you all probably have similar experiences, especially from the MCN world, where it's becoming much more niche. And but those niches are big. And so you're getting sizable pockets of people that really need, that like that personalization. And so it used to be something that you take these big, broad swaths and do. And now we were able to get it a lot more specific to the person. And I can get into some examples of that. So I think of social TV in terms of that.
Okay. One, both.
Oh, so my question, when do we start calling television the second screen? I think it's an important question. Sorry. So that is coming very much from where I've been coming from, where a huge population of people is consuming a huge amount of content, and their primary device is either mobile or their desktop computer, and they use it for many of the functions that a second screen app would provide, except that it's already part of the platform if you're on mobile or if you're on your desktop computer. So I think all these things are kind of mixing together, mushing together. It's a wonderful, exciting time, also scary in some ways as old models are changing and new models are rising up, but that's the fun part, right? If it was
absolutely.
If it was simple, then it wouldn't be that much fun. And in terms of social television, again, I'd kind of switch the way we talk about it to social video, because it doesn't really matter what kind of device it's coming out of, and new platforms allow a two-way conversation to happen that simply wasn't possible with either broadcast or with cable and satellite. So it's a really different medium that can be complementary to linear, can be competitive with linear. But in the best world, I think, for the person who's on the receiving end of the entertainment experience, whatever works best for that entertainment experience. The medium has to match whatever whatever it is that's coming out of it.
But I don't think it's not competitive if done right. Right.
Sure. I mean, but there has to be evolution, I think. And I think there have been times when legacy platforms are very uncomfortable with the development of new open platforms.
I've never seen that.
Seems a little bit that, right? So into my background, I worked in digital, then I worked in television for 8 years, and then in digital again, very old. So it all starts to come together, I think, now.
I think one of the things that you guys talked about was that idea of, being able to influence these, people that are influencers or highly engaged fans, things like that. And that's one audience. And I think that that's something that, we've all focused on. It's like, okay, well, we're going to use second screen, we're going to get the people that are out there, they're tweeting, they're involved, they're posting on Facebook, all that. But as a marketer, I'm a lifelong marketer, I teach marketing at UW, and what we're able to do now, like I'm anxious to get everybody off of the television on the devices that we can track, or at least on smart TVs, because then customer segmentation, targeting, all that different stuff, you can target different content to different people based on behavior, based on what they're interested in and all that. And it's that next step that really the platform promises us that is really exciting, I think.
Comments, Judy, on TV as a screen and or social?
I'm not as interested of getting everybody off the television, only because, I have that 65-inch and it's really,
It could be a
nice.
smart TV though. Yeah.
It could be a
the
smart
70s smart. Yeah.
Exactly. No, but I completely agree. As we start looking at the mediums and what we can know about each one of those so that you can better target your customers. Because I think Glasgow kind of hit it. It's not a one size fits all. What you consider social for sports is very different than what you consider social for a drama that somebody's engaged with that has diehard fans. And I think that's where we're about ready to make some great pivots in what these experiences look like. Not, one size we can do second screen, we can do social, and here's one set of tools that applies to everything. It's what are the specific tools that apply to the right content to really add value to the consumers, and therefore allow you to target and market to them, because you are providing a value that keeps them there, keeps them engaged, keeps them coming back.
Okay, I want to take one stab here at dealing with second screen, and I suspect partly based on the questions we've gotten here and partly based on having done this panel before, that we'll probably spend more time on social content, communities, interactions amongst people within social TV. But I want to focus on the second screen thing for just a minute or two more. So I have I'm watching TV, and traditionally when this word came up 5 years ago, because it used to be called multitasking, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to make that a point in a second. So I'm sitting here watching TV, and other than doing email and updating my Facebook and chatting and WeChatting and whatever else, Snapchatting or Instagramming that one might be doing, I'm watching TV, and there is this content for tablet and smartphones and PC that's about that TV show. Right. We all get that, right? Super traditional second screen experience. Okay. Help me understand, and if possible, give me an example of a situation where the TV is the second screen. And by the way, if the answer is it's background noise, that's fine if that's your answer. But I can't think of a situation where I'm watching something on my tablet or reading something on my tablet or interacting with something on my tablet or my smartphone, and I get related content from TV. So I'm trying to figure out, the two of you that really said it in particular.
Sure.
What does the TV do when it's the second screen?
Okay, so I think it's really important when we talk about television to distinguish between whether we're talking about the business of television or the thing that's stuck to your wall, which could be displaying your computer, desktop, anything else. So I think that's the vital distinction. In our experiences, if we use Apple products or if we use Google products, both of those companies are working very hard to make our seamless experience, seamless as we move from one device to the next. So the second screen is really whichever one you just left. Whichever one you have, you're working on is the primary one, but I think they can work in very complementary ways. For instance, early in the days of second screen, the idea was about, I think, capturing the conversation on our app, not somewhere else. But Twitter turns out to be really a place where the conversation evolved about things that are happening on television, and it's huge. So it brings in people that weren't didn't even know that show existed. So it has all this upside that nobody imagined. The way that our apps work is really very different from the way a lot of the social second screen. I mean, some of those are first screen people, right? If you make a great app, they probably spend more time with your app than with the show, because there's only so much linear content that costs a ton per minute to produce. The way ours works is totally different. It's not where the conversation happens. Our company came out of singing apps that about 20 million installs all around the world, 3 million active users. And we recently turned on video. They were singing along, the users were singing along to songs they loved and making audio recordings. Now they're able to make videos and to publish those videos to our YouTube channel or their YouTube channel. And what this has done for The Voice, which is a vital, important partner to us, is create the opportunity to maybe have a savings and not do quite as many stadium castings. We turned on we flipped on video in June. July, we ran a 10-day contest to surface talent from this global base. We could only use US people for this contest. We surfaced 10 viable contestants, tried to get 2 to fly out, got to fly 1 out. She performed at the Nokia Live Theater. It's awesome. So it's not in any way competitive with this TV show, The Voice. It's something that people love.
Yeah, it's active engagement in the show. It's like, I mean, that's what you strive for, is the ultimate form of engagement is that, you know, viewer or user or whatever, like giving something of themselves back to you. And that's, you know, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So it doesn't compete, totally feeds the monster, and is time shifted away from the actual broadcast when people want to see what's happening. So
Yeah.
different way of thinking of it.
One area that I saw where they would maybe do, as you're saying, the TV becomes a second. I don't know if this, I'll tell you the experience. So we did, in a past life, I did some work with Fox and Sons of Anarchy. So the second screen app there, and it was primarily based around commerce, which it's a monster unto itself, and it's a challenge to make money there. But in that experience, once people jumped into the second screen experience and started really looking at what they were going to buy, we found that they were much more engaged and stayed in that app well after the show was ended, through their shopping. They put up really good numbers. It was a 2-year trial. I can't disclose what it was, but it was sizable. They made a good amount of money. A good return.
So you're basically using the show Sons of Anarchy to directly drive commerce in your app. So it turns into a commercial. Like, that's not what you expect, right?
Right.
It's cool.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Any additional comment on the TV set and/or traditional linear TV as the second screen?
I have a comment on that, because I think there's sometimes two comments. One is, what we have found is a lot of people, even with the second screen experience, if you're on a second screen, you're most likely doing something different than being engaged with the content that's on the television. And you're most likely not in an app that's talking about the content that's on the television. You're doing email, you're on Facebook, you're tweeting to your friends. But what's on television is, it's not necessarily your primary screen. It's another screen. It's not, I don't think the primary secondary fits anymore. And you're in a vehicle that allows you to kind of talk about it a certain segment of time. And I think a good example of where we even see content that's relevant to what you're doing is fantasy football. Everybody that I know has their fantasy football app, and they're looking at their scores and looking at what's going on. And there's a game on, but that's not near as important to them as what's going on in their fantasy football team right now that could or could not have anything to do with the game on the television.
I think that's an outstanding example.
You know, I have one other one just throw in there that I just thought of, and we haven't actually produced this yet, but there's in the kids market, and I'll sort of speak in big terms here, is in the kids market, kids are not able to do 2 things at the same time based at a certain age. And so if you're programming for kids on something like, you know, not the example, but Dora as an example, you have to send back and forth between the device and the screen. You can't actually simultaneously do something. Kids have trouble shifting back and forth. And so what happens is it goes primary, because you have to shift back and forth between the 2 devices throughout a show.
I think we all really have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's from an attention standpoint, you like really have to make, you're like, okay, now on your iPad, we need you to blah, 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 or this other device.
And we do see that in ethnographies. When we go into people's homes and watch them for hours, we absolutely see the behavior of all age groups.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I not much to my surprise, we're going to probably focus mostly on social TV. How are we doing back there, out there, y'all? Questions? So, okay, you know what? You were the nice man that had one from minute one, weren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, some nice guy did, which we appreciate. But let's go ahead and go with you. Why don't you stand up since we don't know any microfication, amplification?
We can hear him.
All right, so actually sort of two questions maybe. First one related to, you mentioned multitasking, because I think that's really what we're talking about here. And then the second question leads into that is, so is this multitasking? And if so, are there varieties of multitasking? I think there are. And then the second question is related to why just two screens? We carry a number of things with us. If we have more than two things, what are we going to do with them together?
So let's start with that one, because I think third and fourth screen, probably a relatively easy question. I'd like to also actually have any perspective from these experts on how many screens will people use. Second screen, third screen, fourth screen, do they transcend like that, or is it a bunch of second screens? Or
I mean, I love talking. You guys interrupt me anytime.
Go for it. Go for it.
So I think
Thank you very much.
you have as many screens as you want. There's always one that you're looking at that's your primary screen. So it could be a multiplicity of them. Like, you know, I'm trying to stop carrying an iPad and a phone and a computer. It's a little silly to have that in my backpack, but I find myself kind of needing them all and moving around one's primary.
you would agree that some people would probably have a TV set on, a PC up and running, and a tablet possibly going. They might even be doing something on their phone.
Absolutely. I actually try to kind of turn it off when I leave work, because that's my work.
Sure.
But yeah, I think a lot of people do that.
Multi-screen.
Especially
Yeah.
younger
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
And by the way, when you say younger, how many years are you talking?
okay, that's a great question. So millennials is what people
So
are often talking.
1837.
13 to
Okay.
1337. Like, I'd say even people who are born, right up to 2000, they consume their content in a very different way that to me feels like, at first working with them, it felt weirdly flat. Like, a text is as important as a real-time conversation. And at first I was like, oh, I'm right here.
Yeah.
But it's all conversation that's all coming in as primary, and people are making these real-time
Switching back
decisions.
and forth.
Yeah.
You made a really good point earlier that whatever screen you're looking at is your primary screen. And that's going to vary, because then you look at something else and you look at something else. Your primary experience is changing as your eye moves from device to device. And some of us text on our phone, do something different on our iPad, and then watch television on a different screen. And yes, that definitely is multitasking. And to me, that brings up a follow-on is, how do you keep people engaged in your content, and how do you keep them focused on what you want them to be focused on, instead of looking away when you're trying to market to them or moving to it. But
And we're going to talk about engagement, I guarantee you, whether it comes from the audience or not.
Somebody.
3, 4 devices, any comments in that regard?
Well, I was just thinking,
Brian?
if you look at the generation that's coming up even behind this, the 2000 and up, it's, we look at, as the toy industry as an example, the number one toys last year no one asked for toys, like iPad, iPhone, iPod Touch, and then Kindle or something like that. And normally it was all toys on that list. And so even other industries are having this problem where there's not a difference between, like you're saying, the conversation, but even between a toy, they're all part of that same equation. And so, even other industries are looking at, okay, well, if a kid is playing with Hot Wheels, as an example, how do we still become part of that equation? Keep them, if they're going to shift to another screen or a screen at that point, how do we keep them involved in our brand and in that particular brand? So it's everybody's dealing with it.
We are one of the projects that we're working on right now with, well, actually there's two of them, but one project with one of the national phone carriers here in the United States is working very strongly to come out with finding ways to, you would use the term multitasking. So what we're trying to accomplish, and I think all of us in various ways, are finding the right information, the right video for the right time at the right place in your life. So how we're working through that is making the machines and the platform or the software smart enough so that it takes the multitasking decision out of your hands, so that the little instant message that you get, that comes to your phone, and that's on your wrist, and it's right there, and you don't have to pull up something else or look at your screen or go to another device. Tying that to your phone, tying that to your PC and your main television or main consuming device, so that anyway, it in essence will chapterize the different things in your life that's important to you and take that multitasking away, so that it makes it a easier easier profile for you. It's one of the biggest challenges that kind of big data and machine work is pushing out, and we're fighting those battles right now.
Like a super duper flip book, just to make sure I understand. Like it's kind of
That's what I'm
slapping,
going to
right?
steal from you today.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Super duper flip book.
So let's build on this question just a little bit and get to what I'm thinking when you ask the question. Hopefully I'm down the lines of what you're asking. There are examples, and you all could give us many of them, and then probably at some point we'd love to hear the ones you think are great, where I'm watching a TV show in real time or in some time shifted format, and I'm getting additional content, or I'm interacting with the community, or I'm interacting with the program in some way. TV first screen, additional interaction device, second screen, primary screen when I'm interacting with it. I don't know how often that happens. I mean, I've got some data on that. But I think you are, I'm guessing, putting up multitasking as not doing that, not doing something on the second screen that's related to the first screen, but doing, right?
It might not, it could be, or it might
Yeah,
not.
and that's what I was thinking about is, so help us understand, I mean, only X% of the time that you have two screens open, TV and a second screen, let's just say, are you actually going to be doing something related to the content, and X amount of the time you're going to be doing email or chatting or checking your Facebook. Do you have any opinions about how that breaks down, and maybe more importantly where that's going? Because my own sense is that a lot of this, and I think some of our data suggests that a lot of the second screen is doing stuff that's got nothing to do with the first screen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd imagine the more that you're doing, I mean, you guys actually probably know the stats on it, but I mean, I imagine the more that you're doing, the less that you're paying attention to whatever it is that's going on. And I was
On the TV.
On the TV, yeah. I mean, sample size of one. Yesterday, I had an iPad with my bank account open. Anybody use YNAB? I was using YNAB to like do my budgeting stuff. It's a great application if you need to run a budget. And then I was watching Total Recall. I was watching until I just turned on something to have it on in the background. I cannot remember what was going on in that show. And I just remember looking back up and just thinking, I just watched an hour of this and I didn't see any of it. And so I feel like the more that you do have going on that's unrelated to the show, the less you're likely to pay attention to what's happening in the show. From a business standpoint, that's obviously not great for us, because what we want people to do is pay attention, because we want them to see more ads and get the content and interact.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
You're talking about the lack of attention to the big screen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we see a bunch of binge viewing where there's really intensive
Yeah,
attention on the screen.
yeah.
So wouldn't that have the reverse effect? So if you're going out trying to give a second screen experience to a binge viewing experience, why would they want to engage with your platform if they're really focused on this?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Binge viewing is by definition VOD, right?
Yep.
It's very different. There's real time on. We're talking about sports. We're talking about news.
I'm totally aware of that, but they don't care. Like consumers just don't care that it's, VOD or it's real time, right?
Sure.
So
That's what I'm saying. It's not good for a real time second screen experience. So if something is no longer in production, it's just a bunch, like there's 40 hours of awesome on your Netflix account. There may be a great second screen experience, but it's not chat during the show. What do you think is going to happen next, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's
everybody's
not
on a different time.
appropriate for
I
that
guess I
time.
bring up
But
this
you
one
can-
too, to just point out that I think we think about this through the sort of prism of network television
Oh,
and
yeah.
scheduling,
Yep.
rather than what consumers really care about, which is content.
Are you guys
100%
mostly,
with you.
sorry,
Yeah.
is this TV crowd or digital crowd? Because it's very different, right?
Who
TV.
here, that's a great question. Who here has got a current TV, traditional TV involvement, TV distribution, TV production, and who's had a past TV production or TV distribution or other relationship? Brian, I would include you in that category if you're still here. And who, most of you would call yourselves digital people? Okay, interesting.
I'm with you on that though, because it is, I mean, same phenomenon. We're watching, Boardwalk Empire the next night, and how I burned my finger, but it's glue gun. There's do other things while you're watching TV, but there are applications. I mean, you guys do stuff that like syncs up with on demand, time shifted, all that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And things that do it live, and that's what is in common on. There are these experiences that you're binge watching. You're watching something that has a second screen experience available to it. We find a lot of people actually will watch content and then go back to watch a second screen experience to learn additional information, especially if it's something like Boardwalk Empire that you're so enthralled in the story
Right.
that the second screen can be a little distracting. That even those binge viewers, they watch an episode, they go back, they learn more, they move forward if it's available. But that's what I was saying before, the type of experiences you offer are very specific to the type of content that it's being geared towards.
Would you generally, and I think this is what you're asking, would you generally expect that when people are binge viewing, whether it's a Netflix or a Hulu Plus or a Hulu or other experience, that they're more engaged in the primary TV content versus traditional multitasking, homework, school, office work, or texting or emailing? I think that's the question you're
That's
asking.
kind of what I'm asking. I think
You know.
I'm just setting up the parameter that maybe when people watch TV now, they really are engaged in whatever it is that they're watching.
I think it depends on the show, though, right?
It totally depends on the show.
And that's to your point. It's when you look at the second screen, it could be that you're still using that same screen to then involve in the second screen, engage in the second screen content later.
Exactly, and I think that's great. I've been through a bunch of panels where I've seen people in booths behind windows look at our thing, and it's so canned that please play the game while the commercial happens. It's just so driven, and I don't think people really pay attention.
Right.
And I think data sort of backing up as we're starting to look at how people are engaging with the experiences now and what they are engaging in. I think second screen experiences, it's been a few years they're going out, learning more every day about how users interact with the content, what's important with them to interact, when they will share content, when they want to be able to drive better experiences. And I think the technology is getting there, and I think that the data is getting there to be able to drive those better experiences.
All right, we've had a lot of references to good experiences. Tell us what you think are give us solid examples. I know you'll be happy to talk about The Voice, of what you think are good social TV experiences. Programs with good social TV experiences, or content with good video social experiences. You like The Voice?
Yeah, we got a good thing going. Yeah, it's wonderful for
What
us.
other than The Voice? You like any of these vote on the endings? That seems to be over.
That's over because it doesn't necessarily make that much sense when almost everybody time shifts their viewing, right? Like binge watching, since that's what people are doing, it means they're not watching in real time. And so it really shifts that conversation.
What other good experiences? You a Vigil fan? Are you a Miso fan?
I'm sure I am. I have not used much of Vigil or Miso, but I'm sure they're awesome. I am just coming back to television. I have just been so far away from watching as it happens broadcasts of anything except for news and sports for so long that I'm still kind of, it's just, or a contest format where there's urgency that's not scripted. Those are things that I would watch in real time.
So what are good social TV experiences? You all referred to it in different ways. Name a program, name a format, name a genre, make it as easy or as hard on yourself as you want.
I like the award show, type stuff, or things that are, do you guys all run do the Grammys and stuff like that? Sorry. And then
no mumbling in class.
Some of the other, I thought Hannibal was good. Things that are really fan based that have stuff that's kind of built around the outside of it. I think those are all well done.
I see most of the good experiences coming right now from, as you point out, more live type performances, more things that are, I want to say, reality or something that's happened is the perfect time to comment about it and perfect time to share it. And so the award shows is a perfect example. Things like The Voice are a perfect example, and even sports are a perfect example because it's when things are going on right now, other than trying to get somebody's interest in a scene of a show that happened 5 minutes. It's really hard to even get them to the point. But I think when the live broadcast, it's much easier to go, this is happening now, and driving that engagement.
Music is a great one. That would be the example that I use. There's a channel called Go Jazz, which jazz is having a huge renaissance right now in Europe and Asia. And so jazz is something that if you're watching it in a club, you want to sit there and experience it, and you might say something to whoever you're there with or while you're having a drink, but you can't really have a conversation about the musician or what they've done or what's going on, but you might want to. And if you're watching this channel, we're seeing and this is on our 2SI platform in Liberty Global, but people are watching this and then they're tweeting constantly and having full conversations about the musicians, what other stuff that they've done. Oh, you should check out this album, and then it almost creating other little conversations about it. So I think that's a really compelling one because it adds value to the experience.
I think sometimes we're like, it's the TV part here that we're kind of bumping up against. It's if we just call it social video, great linear content can be delivered through that, and conversation can happen with it. It may be broadcast, but I think we all know it's like not that much action going on with broadcast right now, unless it's sports and specific licenses.
Yeah.
So once we kind of like shake off the way we used to think about things as being linear, we can think of all these different kinds of experiences as gateways into other things. Like, for instance, Boardwalk Empire could have books. It's such a rich, huge world with so much backstory. Like, you can start a franchise with immersive, interactive experiences, with publishing, with the real world events where everybody dresses up. Like, it's just a road into the whole product, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
Audience, other questions? Go ahead, in the back. Stand up so everybody can hear you, please.
That's first screen now.
I was wondering where you see the importance and significance of augmented reality technology, especially when we're talking about second screen, first screen, second screen.
Yeah.
How can you combine them? And how can you monetize that potentially, or make the primary screen interact with the secondary screen? That was, I think, one of the challenges that you guys identified beforehand. That you basically switch from primary to primary, but the screens are not really interacting.
Yeah.
So an example of that is Flipkart, for example.
Yep.
The application.
Yeah.
Okay, AR. If you want to talk about VR, feel free.
Yeah, it's on the
We'll
way,
just
right?
start with Judy this time.
Yeah.
I think that's a terrific question, because what we've been trying to do is a second screen experience around content that isn't necessarily developed for a second screen experience, right? It's shoehorning something in, which is great. It provides additional information. It can provide character information. You can interact with parts of it. But I think what's really going to change is, now that you've got that interaction, we're going to see content that's created around the ability that you can have this interaction, that you can be immersive, and you don't have to have a story that has a script and a timeline to hear. You have content that enables you to work with it and interact with it.
Yeah.
Augmented reality?
100% agree. Yeah. I mean, augmented reality too, in our terms, is more of like, you hold the iPad up and you see something going on, all that kind of stuff, versus maybe interaction between the two devices. And there's a lot of technology plumbing that's being put in place to make all that work, whether it's glass or, the different applications you mentioned. I mean, that is the future. You want to be able to actually interact with the content in some way, whether it's actual show or ads or whatever it happens to be.
So augmented reality is really cool stuff, and it's something that we're looking at and trying to figure out the answer to it. I don't know what it is. So you raise a great question. I don't think anybody does. But there certainly is, especially around the commerce side, there's amazing opportunities there. I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they watch the Lego videos, and they're playing with their Legos, and it's just a natural thing that there should be a way to make all those three come together in a format that is valuable to them and also gets dad to throw some dollars into the pie. If you have an answer, let's talk after.
Well, I think if I could just add on, actually, since you threw out the Legos thing, because it's interesting, it's that you have new tools to work with then at that point, right? So we have like front-facing cameras as an example. And so, our company's done some work on mapping faces, and we can do things like, allow you to try on glasses, and won't get into all the details of it, but there's some really, once you have those tools at your disposal, you can start doing really cool things that allow interactivity between that device and the user. So maybe you see a pair of Ray-Bans on TV, and then you can try the Ray-Bans on. Like, there's, nice connection points that you can actually.
I think it's easy to, like, we find ourselves at places that a long time ago we're like, I wonder if someday this will happen, horseless carriages and so forth. So, right. But augmented reality, it's like afterwards, if I get your name, I can step over there and Google you and see who you are. Like, we're in it. We're in it with a lot of these things. It's figuring out specific commercial applications is still a challenge, because every time you have if it's a client-based business, you have a client who has a very specific need. Like, I need to drive tune in. For us, if it was the voice, we could say, well, we have 5 million people in the United States that we can push a notification to whenever we need to do that. So that would be something that can drive that, but it's just one specific solve. But if you're able to back out and be who you may be and just think about, what do I wish? Then I think it really takes the lid off it. And so the commercial dollars that we all need to operate drive the tech, but then people just figure out different things to do with it that are totally cool.
And what about the Oculus Rift and the Sony machine? Would you consider those to be additional screens? I think that's fairly clear, right?
Yeah.
So you see TV, VR being a powerful.
Well, and you could have a TV in there. So we're entering this immersive zone where I just put on my glasses and I could be walking through the desert and you guys are all goblins and I'm watching TV.
Have you tried it as evident? Have you tried any of the VR? Have you tried it, Joe?
I haven't put it on.
Who's tried it? Who's tried a VR device? Who liked it? Keep your hand up. Oh, none of you guys liked it at all. Interesting. Okay, I think there was I don't think it might have even been a relevant question in the back because your hand shot up and it got me excited. Were you telling me that we're running out of time?
My name's Kimberly, and I wanted to say you guys are making some really important points. But my primary question is, as the revenue models change, as I see a review that friends popped up on Facebook on my desktop, and then I go to my smartphone to download or order my next Netflix that I then watch on my 65-inch television set. How is this affecting your revenue model? I mean, now that it's more call to action rather than here's a fluffy perfume commercial, certainly the monetization changes.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I mean, I was going to build on what you said right there. Where you talked about driving tune-in. That's the fundamental flaw of the industry, in my opinion. It's like, okay, we're going to drive tune-in for what? So more people can see more of these ads that have the fluffy perfume ad, versus get somebody to click through and make a purchase, right? And which is a higher value business model.
If you know me and you know what I want and you've tracked my past activities, I don't mind targeted advertising.
Correct. Right.
I secure my privacy otherwise, offline and offline. But it's got to be a pragmatic driven message, not just buy this vegetable soup that I'm not even going near.
Right.
Well, the thing about I think that like the entertainment business isn't under threat by these new models. It's just the 30-second spot business that's under a little bit of threat, which like that's okay.
That's
like,
an $80 billion market.
Yeah.
But there's going. I'm not. That's why we're all here, right? A digital Hollywood, because that's
Presumably wanting a piece of that $80 billion.
right. And I think it takes a while for people to realize or acknowledge, if they're part of, as we all have been, part of the holding hands and pretending it's not true thing, that everybody's time shifting their content, and the 30-second spots aren't necessarily being seen by everyone that it sounds like they're being seen if you read a report about how many people saw a certain commercial.
And it may not really be that is at threat. It's just evolving into ways that you can better target your audience. You can have more value for what you're creating, the collateral you're creating, the advertising you're creating, because you know those customers more, because you're on these platforms that allow you to understand what that consumer likes, doesn't like, even outside of their video watching experience.
Absolutely.
Do you think this additional content reduces engagement when it's in the presence of traditional advertising? I think that's kind of the first question. So is traditional television advertising, which is basically not moved in ever, really, it's been at that 80 billion for quite a while. So the internet's not taking money from TV. The internet's taking almost all of its money from print.
Right.
And video today is taking all of its money from digital display. So are second screen experiences and social TV going to reduce the value of traditional TV advertising?
That gentleman said something interesting about make sure to do the second screen thing during the break. But that's disintermediating your your advertiser's not being seen unless it was integrated, that advertiser and in that example. So
I mean, I think it has everything to do with the flow of the whole thing and respecting the fact that consumers are now in control of every single piece of this, really, other than sports.
So is it just obvious giving consumers more content is going to reduce some of the attention to advertising on the original, on the traditional screen?
interstitial live broadcast 30-second spots, yes, but you can still reach them, and now you can reach them 1,000 ways.
But you might still reach them with the 30-second spot, just a more relevant one, and then you have to figure out the attribution model. And I think that's what you were talking about, Kimberly. There, it's like, okay, if I see this, then that, and then I do this. First of all, how do we build that business model and where we're used to just paying for people, showing up and watching our ads. The second is, how do the different people get paid along that way? And that was something marketers had to figure out for a long time, which is called the attribution model. It's like, okay, if someone searches for something on Google and then they go and buy it right after that, does Google get on the money? No, because they probably saw a banner here and then a thing there, and someone told them about the thing, and then by the time they got to there, they actually knew what they wanted. So there's that same model that applies to the entertainment industry that we need to get right. And along the lines, then you start doing much more specific advertising, much more specific placements to drive more purchase and drive the desired behavior along the way.
So I can say with us, some of the things that, this is an evolution, right? There's not all of this data is perfectly available to create these perfectly targeted ads right now. It's getting there, but even to be able to drive users to content that they would want to see, to make sure that, the content is in such a way that you can go directly to it, not to somebody's homepage, that you can move down to what you're trying to target them to get more engagement. Because in addition to driving, the advertisers for the content, you want to get viewership for the content that you're looking at. Not just tune in because you may not be at a certain time, but you have content that's there and available in better ways to drive people to it and maximize, how many users are watching this content, so it has a higher valuation.
Can you give us any sense, any of the four of you, all the four of you, of how much money in the United States today is being generated by social TV and or second screen experiences? Whether it's ad dollars, whether it's premium apps, whether it's microtransactions, just any sense of what this business looks like financially?
I can't remember that last IAB report. Big and drifting right. Yeah, I think what 400 billion is the global television business.
The ad
That's not right. Ad business,
probably.
right?
Probably
So it starts to move, right? Like it just starts
but
to
in
drift.
the U.S., are we talking about hundreds of millions, tens of millions, billions of revenue driven by social TV and or second screen experiences?
I don't know.
Unfortunately, no. A lot of our stuff is based in Europe and overseas, so I know those markets a lot better.
And those markets are somewhat, in some regards, more advanced in this.
They're
area.
much more advanced.
Yeah, they certainly were interactive TV.
The roads are built.
Yeah.
But I think the important part is that it's not taking it away. It's often the same.
Oh, I didn't say taking it away.
Right. So it is drifting, right?
Yeah,
It has to drift.
But in the U.S., is this a $100 billion market or a $10 billion market of revenue from, or $1 billion? Give us
right this second,
or next second.
It's evolving quickly. I mean, I can tell you about the digital video, the YouTube, how much money was made by YouTube on digital video, which is 80% of internet video.
Would you consider that social TV or a second screen experience?
I would consider that social TV or social
all YouTube
video
ad revenue. You would put in that category.
So they never issued a report, but something like $6 billion is what people are estimating. It's a lot of money, but considering the number of views that are happening, it's not that much money. So the CPMs are not the same as a highly targeted premium television experience.
CPMs that happen if you had that viewage during The Voice.
Yeah, right.
Any other opinions on revenue driven by second screen or social TV? I would argue that the YouTube example is predominantly an example of ads on traditional linear content.
Traditional linear content or linear? Or it's all linear.
Just linear content.
It is, but it's often very different. For instance, like a Minecraft video, it's not traditional linear content in any way. It was made by some kid using an incredible set of tools that were made by some other people, and they're allowing him to create content.
Okay, so in addition to advertising on digital video, monetization for second screen and social TV, can you give us any sense of size or examples, or, here's a case where somebody made, $5 million or,
yeah.
I mean, the TV tune-in money alone is hundreds of millions of dollars. I know that for a fact.
That's, yeah.
So you guys don't want to tell us where the money is.
It's for engagement. But often a second screen isn't about adding incremental revenue. It's about creating engagement to support your primary broadcast revenue stream.
Okay,
right. So, but it's not going to be that way very soon, very long. That's just the history of it.
Okay.
Right?
Absolutely.
Anybody want to say anything about where the money is?
No.
Yeah, you're hiding from us. Next question for the audience. Yes, sir.
I got a question about, you mentioned before, besides TV, interactive TV, like fantasy sports. So, how much do you think that the need for a second screen to create and present and kind of, surface interesting or related content to a consumer is because the first screen and interactive smart televisions aren't there yet, right? Look at something like a Comcast X1, who allows for your entire fantasy sports and actually see it as you're watching the game live. Or like an Xbox One console allows you to do the same thing.
Right.
So you end up multitasking on your primary screen. And as these screens get larger, the real estate to allow for interactive experiences
It's better.
you have delivered OTT or set top or through console or even ACR on traditional linear becomes a lot more plausible, right? And do you think that second screen and kind of focusing on that kind of like voice example or like breaking that story sync and that kind of stuff, as everything kind of shifts, how much of that is actually eventually just going to be on that primary huge screen and now becomes our portable view into a variety of things?
I have no idea what that was.
That is a great question.
I can go to.
That tone. Ignore that tone.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't make it.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
With the exception of, I would say it depends on sort of like, it's all about behavior, right? And people's actual behavior. And so, maybe if you're searching for something, it might be easier to go down and, type something or, something like that. But yeah, if you're talking about like fantasy sports or seeing other tweets that are rolling through or the ability to click on something that was interesting in the show that you were watching or something like that. Yeah. I mean, if you not take your eyes off of it, I think it's a pretty compelling proposition.
I agree. I think the one thing we have to aware of a lot of times, though, is the TV might be a multi-person viewing experience and your devices are a single-person viewing experience. So I would interact more with something if it wasn't affecting everybody else that was watching that, right? So I think there might always be something that allows an individual consumer to interact with the content different than everybody watching on a television.
That's a fantastic
I thought so.
distinction.
Yeah.
Like
I was just
that's a
gonna say,
takeaway for me. That's awesome.
I think that's and you're talking there about both remotely with you and specifically physically with you? People in the room, in the living room with you and or people
Right.
online or both?
Well, I was talking about people, first of all, physically with me, right?
Oh, okay, I
Because
was wondering.
they may not care, but the second screen lets me interact with people that are remotely with me that the person in the room may not care about. I just think that it's just a different connected world now, but a lot of times the big television in the living room might still be a shared device where your iPad, your iPhone, your tablet, whatever is pretty much a personal device.
So in other words, your kid or your spouse is with you even if they're on their iPhone.
There you go. It's still family time.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Kevin, I wanted to ask a question about the value of the second screen ads. Where do you see traction? Is it because the second screen is helping the consumption experience, or is it adding value in some other ways, or is it a simple tool that you can communicate with others like Twitter and Facebook? Or is it something that the primary screen service has built in the secondary consideration? What is thinking of?
I think that goes to what Kimberly was discussing earlier, that the personalization, or it by definition, the way you phrased it is that it's on a second screen. So we're assuming it's a smart device. It's not just an unconnected 70-inch TV sitting up there. If it's a smart TV or if it's a tablet or if it's something, you're now in an environment that we know an awful lot more about you and what you're doing, what you're watching, what you want to do next, what other type shows you're going to like. There's all kinds of algorithms that already exist that lay this out, and every company here is probably working on it in different ways, but getting better and better at targeting those ads. But basically it creates much more relevant ads to you at the time that they're at the right time as well. So that's how it's getting that increase, if that's what your question was.
I want to expand on that too, because I remember you just sort of asked about the value of this experience. I think there's this tremendous value in the second screen and also the ability to interact socially, that you're informing people of something else. And I'm not talking about the, hey, look down this app or hey, watch this show, but I think being able to drive users more into the content, you don't have to, you're doing marketing for the content providers that way. I think you're drawing so many users to not have some of these social engagements, to me, would put a content owner at a disadvantage over people that do, just to drive people to the content more, and not necessarily tune in, but content's available in a variety of places, whether it's on their app, whether it's on Hulu, whether it's on Netflix, etc.
Okay, we're going to go into the lightning round since we only have 6 minutes left, which is going to be one quick question answered by no more than 2 people, but preferably one person from the panel. And I'm going to ask you each for a lightning round question at the end of the 6 minutes we have left, which is to name one engagement trick, one engagement idea, something that you have found in doing digital interactive content that drives more engagement. If you don't like the question, you can pass on.
Okay.
Okay, lightning round, short questions. We really get to you all? See, now I consider that to be a satisfied audience. So nobody wants dessert or coffee. Okay, dessert, coffee, and if we have time, you're the cheese course. Dessert.
About broadcast as being a $1 billion industry. Do you think at some point they will be able to use the analytics from digital to individually target, let's say if Judy and I were watching the same program, we would get different ads?
We can do that. We can do that now.
You just can't do it over broadcast.
One or two. You'll be giving up your only one if you take this one.
Sorry.
Okay.
I love answering.
One or two. I know you do. You get enthusiastic, which is awesome.
Sorry. What
Judy's winning for brilliance. You two are most agreeable.
Say that again. But the,
Targeted advertising. Two answers. Two people can
in the
answer
United
this.
States,
One-to-one advertising.
In the United States, AT&T does it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they are capitalizing on analytics.
Yes.
Second question on one-to-one targeting. Okay, there is a little bit of that out there, but it's in the early stage. Coffee? Go ahead in the back. Stand up, please.
When will Hollywood stop thinking of digital as the redheaded stepchild?
Could be your last comment of the day. Go ahead.
They're buying digital for a lot of money. They just bought the multi-channel network Maker Studios for $500 to $900 million. That's Disney buying that. So I think they're starting to think it.
Fair price in your opinion?
Absolutely.
Okay. Judy, is digital the after child?
I don't think it's the redheaded stepchild anymore. I think just this past week there's been major announcements from HBO Go, CBS, ESPN about alternative ways to get content with subscription services. I think we're only going to see that continue to grow.
You'll see 25 more of those in the next 2 months.
It does seem to be breaking.
Absolutely.
Last question, then we're going to ask about a little engagement advice or tricks or practices.
Hi, Andrew. I'm from Features Company. I just have one question. We all kind of agree that I think that Twitter is probably the platform of note for social. So if you were a product head there, you were like Dana Graff or someone like that, what product would you make for seconds?
Go ahead. Oh, that's right. You're on probation. I forgot. Brian?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that everybody's on Twitter. That's the thing. You look at like the trends right now. I was reading about a little too old to use, but Yik Yak on the way down here, right? And there's I think we need to think about fluidity. It's ridiculous. Yeah. We need to think about fluidity and how we're communicating with each other as opposed to kind of banking on the one. And that's the one thing I'm gonna bridge this to the previous question, which was, I've been to I think 4 digital Hollywoods now and for 4 years, and whether as an attendee or a speaker, and there is more energy this year. There's no question about it. It seemed like more stuff going on, more people talking about it. People are in.
Absolutely.
But my concern is that everybody's kind of getting stuck on certain platforms and not thinking just about, okay, people are going to use digital to communicate with one another and they want to do it while they're watching.
Well, let me rephrase that. Because Twitter by any other name.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously does
Sure.
Snapchat. I mean, it's not never ending.
Yeah, yeah.
The details are really short, though. You just mentioned HBO. And there's no difference from HBO last week to this week to the week before, because I still don't know how much of the and what content's going to happen, right?
True.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know anything about that. So the question kind of is, with all that data, with that one-to-one marketing, like ad nauseum, what do you build? So like,
I would personally right now start investing in some of the over-the-top platforms and building stuff directly into them. So if you take HBO Go or something like that, because then I know what show you watched, I know where you live, I know, like I can get very direct with you.
So
on
integration
that.
with Roku, Chromecast, etc.
But yeah, I might even start small, like more sort of network based than that first and grow out. That would be me personally as a product manager. So I would start there and then kind of build out. That's my take.
It'd be my second one.
Great.
I can answer too.
Yes.
Cool. I think what we're finding is that when users are watching content, they're typically doing something else. They could be on Twitter, right? They could be on Facebook. And going back into something app and then going and saying share on Twitter makes no sense when you're already into these social environments. I think finding a way that, there's ways, as you mentioned, knowing what the user's watching, whether it's APIs that are developed or something so they can incorporate that in their experience on what you're doing, whether it's watching video, whether it's gaming, etc., to immediately talk about it.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to go to my question of give us some advice a hint, a trick for engagement. I think we all agreed that engagement is very important and that monetization would follow engagement. So give us some advice from your various platforms and content. We're going to let Glasgow have the last word. So we'll start with Judy if she doesn't mind. Engagement, things you like, things that you think are good examples of engagement, things that are tricks you've learned about engagement.
Come back to me.
Okay, that's totally fair. Brian?
Well, that's, so our company does a lot of, we call it motivational design, but as part of that gamification, it's sort of a dirty word in some places, but you look at intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, you look at things like personalization, collection, all the things that drive us to kind of come back to a game and get that little reward center in our head triggered. That's always a good starting point. Making great content is another good starting point. That kind of is the first step to getting people engaged.
Jody?
Old school sales, high value propositions, time based. So offer them something good for the next 24 hours. If you do X now, that worked tremendously for us with SOA.
Do you want to jump in before we?
I will
before we go to Glasgow.
I think it also still comes down to creating the right browse, explore, search interfaces to be able to find what you're looking for very quickly and very easily inside of all these interfaces.
So first, I think it's important to step back and define engagement, like figure out what you mean. So make sure you're not sending somebody to do something when you really want them to be working in an ad. But the main thing, I think, is, or I believe deeply, is to create something that's really engaging. And that may sound pat, but it's not at all. It's like that's the job. Would you do that, or are you just doing it because your client said they need this very specific kind of thing?
If
right?
you do that, everything else works, but it just all falls into place.
It's got to be awesome.
Yeah.
So my trick for you, everyone, is ask a question. Use these additional mechanisms, whether it's social TV or second screen, to ask consumers questions. If you ask them questions, they'll respond to you, and that is an engagement. I thought this was a great panel. And I think you guys are going to be about to get a lot of people wanting to talk to you. I think we've got about 10 minutes or so between hands. You guys are awesome. Seriously, each one of you in your own way. You, I am bottling and taking home. I am definitely.
Nice guys.
Essence of Glasgow home.